in the last 5 years, we've seen a new abuse of the deep administrative state. And I think it's the most dangerous in our history. We were told nightly on cable news and through leaks with these agencies of unelected bureaucrats that the Trump administration was in the hands of Vladimir Putin because of the outcry of Russian collusion spawned by both the director of the FBI, James Comey, who we did not know had been authorizing the FBI to pay Mr. Steele. We allotted about $35 to $40 million to Robert Mueller, who wasn't elected to anything. We gave him enormous latitude in his investigatory agendas. He assembled something called the Dream Team, and he pointed them in the direction of the Trump administration and said, go after and find the guilty parties. I say guilty parties because there was not a presumption of innocence, but guilt. Well, $40 million, and 22 months later, we found out there was no Russian collusion. But my point is this: when we held the deep state bureaucrats accountable and called them before congressional committees and put them under oath, lo and behold, very strange things happened. Now, Robert Mueller, he went to Congress, and when he was asked, who is Christopher Steele, what is the Christopher Steele dossier, what is Fusion GPS, he shrugged. He said he had no idea what that was about.
The name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that.
Let me just help you. It was. It's not a trick question. Right? It was Fusion GPS.
Let's take the director himself of the FBI. Again, a lifelong bureaucrat, James Comey. He did his best to get on television and tell us, as judge, jury, and executioner, that the Trump administration had been guilty of collusion with Russia. So he was called in, like Robert Mueller, before Congress and put under oath. And what did former director of the FBI, James Comey, do? On 245 occasions, while under oath, he said either I do not remember or I don't know.
I don't remember. I don't recall being informed of that. I don't know what that refers to. As I said earlier, that does not ring any bells with me when I read that. I don't remember it. I don't remember receiving anything.
In October.
I do not.
You don't know.
I don't.
You signed the application.
I don't know. I could speculate, but I don't know. I haven't spoken to the
I don't want you to speculate. We'll try to figure this all out ourselves.
Try that if the IRS audits you sometimes and asks you questions about your own data and records. You say, I don't know, while under oath. I think you'd probably be indicted. Two members of the so-called Dream Team, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who were supposed to be independent-minded and unbiased, were dismissed when it was leaked to the press that in a long series of texts in a private romantic relationship, they more or less confessed that they had used their offices to help sabotage a presidency. John Brennan, former director of the CIA, with access to security clearances, knew that Donald Trump was colluding. And then he was brought in before a congressional committee and said to repeat that under oath, and he could not do that.
I don't know whether or not such collusion, that's your term, such collusion existed. I don't know. But I know that there was a sufficient basis of information and intelligence that required further investigation by the Bureau to determine whether or not U.S. persons were actively conspiring, colluding with Russian officials.
When people began in the military to feel that public opinion was going against Trump, he was unpopular, there were people in the diplomatic corps who felt that he had not drawn on their expertise, they began to attack Donald Trump. Retired General McCaffrey said that Donald Trump was comparable to Mussolini because he had canceled a subscription to the New York Times to some bureaucracy. A very decorated and famous Admiral McRaven wrote in an op-ed that Donald Trump should leave office sooner than later. This is not hysteria. One of the most esteemed military analysts and a former high-ranking Pentagon official in the Obama administration, just a few days after Donald Trump in January 2017 was inaugurated, wrote a very influential article in a major foreign policy journal in which he said even though we knew nothing about Donald Trump because he'd only been in office a little more than a week. We have to remove this president. Again, we're talking less than 2 weeks after he was elected. She said we could always have a military coup. In other words, we have people very progressive, very liberal-minded, very humanitarian, telling us, the citizen, that because of our superior morality, our greater enlightened knowledge than you, the dense and blinkered citizen, we take it upon ourselves to go beyond the Constitution for your benefit. And we have the right, indeed, the necessity and the obligation to remove an elected president. In our efforts to improve the lot of mankind, improve the lot of Americans, to make us more prosperous, secure, and free, we have surrendered our liberty to people in charge of that task that are not elected, they're not accountable, they're not audited, but they have enormous powers to destroy our rights and liberties as set forth under the Constitution.